Math 2, Unit 12B, Section 7. So today it's just kind of putting everything together, okay? And so we've learned different methods. We have learned graphing, and basically our book says that graphing's the easiest if you have a graphing calculator, okay? But you could also, if you have a graph there, you could use a graph. Square roots are easiest if the equation has no plain x terms, okay? Factoring is if you can factor the equation easily. Completing the square is if you have an x squared, and also if your x term is even. I normally just make sure that the x term is even. Maybe I should put term there. X term is even. And then the quadratic formula if none of the above work. Okay. These first ones, we're just going to state what we would use. We're not actually going to solve it. Okay? So it says, which method would you choose to solve each equation and justify why? Okay. So let's look at A. I want you to think about which method you would use. Okay, so I heard two answers. One person, or a couple of you said factoring, and some said completing the square. And I can't write, but that's okay. Both of those answers would be correct. Why would you choose factoring? It's easy to factor. Okay, it works. Easy and works. Okay, why would you use completing the square? Yeah, because you can go -8 divided by 4 equals -2, and the coefficient in front is 1. Was somebody going to say something? No? And then I'm going to put coefficient equals 1. Okay, what about B? What would you do on B? Which method?
Square root.
Yes, you would use square roots. Why would you use square roots? Okay, we would use square roots because there is no x term, right? You only have an x squared term. Okay, but yes, we would divide by 169 to both sides and solve it that way. Okay, what about C? Which method would we probably use on C? Yes, you would use the quadratic. And why would we use the quadratic? No other methods work. So quadratic always works when no other methods work. Okay. Number 5. What method would you use? Quadratic. If you were going to use the quadratic on this, what would you need to do first?
You would need to
Good. Subtract 73 because it has to be set equal to 0. Okay, and again, our reasoning would be that no other method works. Okay, what do we do on number 6? Probably factoring, or you could also do completing the square, but I'd probably choose factoring because it's easy and it works. Okay, any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, this next says find the number of real number solutions of each equation. What do they mean by that? How many answers can you get that are not imaginary? So if you have an imaginary number, that one is not real, correct? And so they want to know how many real number solutions. Okay, not imaginary numbers. How many real number solutions do you think you would get on number 7? 2 is correct. How do you know? No. Okay, we would get 2 numbers because what would I do to solve this one? Which method would I use?
Square root.
Yeah, square roots. I'd add 15 to both sides. I would get x squared equals 15. I would take the square root of both sides, and anytime I take a square root, the answer is plus or minus root 15, or you could get the decimal. Do you see here I have a positive answer and a negative answer? Are any of those imaginary? No. So 2 real number solutions. Okay, now, number 8. Do you guys know how many you're going to get on this one? No. So what are we going to have to do to figure it out? Solve it. What's the best method for solving this one? You could try factoring. You wouldn't want to use square root because you do have a plain x term. But personally, when I look at this, because of the coefficient in front, I'm just going to choose the quadratic formula because I'm afraid that like doing multiplying over might not work. I don't know. Or we could. Do you guys want to multiply over and try factoring? Okay, so let's just practice the quadratic formula. So, good. Negative b plus or minus. Good. Minus 4ac all over. Good. Okay, so what is my negative b value? Negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times a is times c is all over 2 times 9. What is 12 squared? Good. 144. And then negative 4 times 9 is negative 36. And negative 36 times 4 is negative 144. What's 144 minus 0? What's 144 minus 144? Okay, 0. So this cancels out. This is gone now. So I really just have negative 12 over 18. How many solutions is that? 1. So this one has 1 real number solution. They don't care what it is. They just are asking me how many solutions are there? How many real number solutions are there? Okay. Moving on. Next one. All of these, they just asked us to solve. So we're going to just find the answers. What method will I use on the first one? Yeah, I would use the quadratic formula as well. Okay, anytime I have a coefficient in front, I normally just try to see if the quadratic formula, or I just use it instead of trying to waste my time. Okay, so we already have the quadratic formula written on our paper up here, and so we can reference that when I'm using this here. It's set equal to 0, so I don't have to worry about moving anything. But make sure it's set equal to 0 before you use the quadratic formula. What is my negative b value? 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared minus 4 times a is times c is all divided by 2 times 6. Okay, so I go through and simplify. Negative 8 squared is, and then I have negative 4 times 6, which is negative 24, and negative 24 times a negative 30 . 720, and we add those together and it equals 784. And you take the square root of 784 and what do you get? 28. So that means I have 8 plus or minus 28 divided by 12. We have 2 solutions, but they actually ask us to solve these, so we are going to find the answers. So you have 8 plus 28 divided by 12, and 8 minus 28 divided by 12. 8 plus 28 divided by 12 is 36 over 12, which is 3. And then here we get negative 20 over 12, which becomes, as a decimal, negative 1.7. If you left that as a fraction, that's also okay. So x equals 3 and negative 1.7. Okay. Moving down. What would you do to solve this next one? Square roots. What would I do for square roots? Good. Add 81 to both sides. X squared equals 81. What do I do next? Square root both sides. And so we get x equals plus or minus 9. How many solutions are there? 2. Good. Okay, next one. What method would you use? I would use quadratic as well. The reason is I have a coefficient in front. This isn't even an even number. I don't even want to mess around with factoring. I know quadratic will always work. So, negative b will be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times a is 2 times c is, I hope all of you are writing these notes down right now, all divided by 2 times 2. Okay, so what is 5 squared? I was. Okay, negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, and negative 8 times negative 63 is?
504.
Good. We add those together and we get? Good. And the square root of 529 is 23. So, we get negative 5 plus or minus 23 all over 4. So how many answers am I going to get? 2. Negative 5 plus 23 divided by 4, and negative 5 minus 23 divided by 4. Okay, that makes how much? 18 over 4, which is 4.5. This makes negative 28 divided by 4, which is negative 7. So x equals 4.5 and negative 7. How many solutions do I have? 2. What do these points actually mean? Very good. Where the graph intersects the x-axis on these, right? Okay. What am I going to do on this one? If I take the square root of 10x, that's not going to help me. Okay, so what should I do? Set it equal to 0. Okay? And so I'm going to subtract 10x to both sides. This cancels. I have x squared minus 10x equals 0. Now, you could use the quadratic formula. I think I heard someone say that. But I would factor. Do you guys notice that they have a GCF?
Yes.
What is the GCF? X. So we take out an x and we're left with x minus 10. When you set those equal to 0, what does x equal? This one would be x equals 0, and this would be x equals 10. So 0 and 10 are my answers. Okay, this is not a decimal in front of here. I'm not sure where that point came from. But what would you do on this one? Factor. Okay, I can't complete the square very well because that's a negative or an odd number. So I'm going to try factoring, but in order to factor, you have to set it to 0. Good. Add 12. X squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. What do I do now? Good. So what multiplies to be 12? Good. 3 and 4, but specifically negative 3, negative 4. Okay, and so the shortcut is what? Good. Make your 2 parentheses and you split your x's in front and you get minus 3, minus 4. And when you set those equal to 0, what does x equal? 3 and positive 4, right? Okay. Any questions?